I am also aware of the name of the food retail entity. But, Mr. President, the entity has begged for its name not to be released. Mr. President, like many other entities, like many other individuals, the entity and its operators are afraid of government badness. The government badness has been a feature of the approach of the JLP government, as anyone who offers critique or dissent. The citizens of the country, Mr. President, are afraid of the government. You embraced a song called Government Badness and Holness, not me. So you speak to the things you embrace, not me. Not me. I am also aware, Mr. President. No, but the pastor is just a exaggerated reality. It's not the first. It's not the first. Many who have criticized Mr. Holness have been arrested and publicized on the internet.
Mr. President, on a point of order. On a point of order.
I can give examples.
On a point of order, Mr. President.
Senator.
On a point of order, Mr. President. On a point of order, Mr. President, the senator is misleading the House, and he must withdraw those allegations. They are untrue. They are untrue. They are baseless, and they should be withdrawn. They should not remain on the record of this honorable chamber.
Mr. President, today is not the day.
Senator Crawford, look now, you heard what the minister
I heard,
said.
Mr. President. And I can guide her to the...
Senator Brown,
I can guide her to the
one
social...
minute. Senator Brown. You have a right to dissent, but you do it in order. Senator Crawford, you have made an allegation about the Prime Minister of this country. You're going to either withdraw it or you're going to substantiate it.
No, sir. I made no allegations. I said people who criticize the Prime Minister has been arrested. I did not suggest. No, I'm saying that I'll direct you to social media. I'll direct you to social media where they consistently post.
Senator Crawford. Senator Crawford, 1 minute. Senator Crawford, 1 minute.
Mr. President,
clear.
What he's saying in any event is still misleading and seeking to imply. There has been nobody who has been arrested for criticizing the Prime Minister. None.
All right, I'll move on.
The noted incidents is not because of criticizing the Prime Minister. Why the person broke the law, went to court and was prosecuted and charged.
You're being unreasonable, Senator. I'm not speaking to a person.
All right, Senator
Senator
Crawford.
Anyone you wish to speak to. Be responsible, man.
No, I can speak to an individual, Mr. President, who had to come on the social media and apologize.
Senator Crawford, I am not concerned about what is happening in the social media, you know. I am concerned about what is happening here, and you are imputing motive to a member of the House of Parliament.
Mr. President.
You have stood up and said that anybody, hold on, hear what you said. Anybody that criticizes the Prime Minister is arrested. Is that true?
Mr. President.
Is that true?
I am saying that, all right. Mr. President, all right, fine. Mr. President, let's move on. Mr. President. Mr. President.
Sorry, Mr. President.
Senator Crawford, 1 minute.
I've never done this before. This is my second term in the Senate, and I've never done this before. We have to remember that we have an international audience also. That statement is very damaging, not only to the Prime Minister, but to the country of Jamaica.
Mr. President, I will move on. Because there is no, listen. Mr. President.
Mr. President, I think that we have reached the point where you should make a ruling on the matter that is before you. And if the senator proceeds, then you should use your authority under the standing orders to discontinue his presentation.
Mr. President, on a point of order, go on, please.
Senator Crawford, you know you can put a stop to this very easily, though.
Mr. President, Mr. President, I'm really not sure what it is Senator Crawford is being asked to withdraw.
What I can tell you, he has made an allegation that anybody who criticized the Prime Minister is arrested.
Mr. President,
he
with
is
respect,
imputing motive to a member of the other House, and he needs to withdraw it.
No,
What
Mr. President, with respect, I think you misheard.
I'm speaking to you and Senator Brown at the same time, so both of you decide who I am addressing. You decide.
Mr. President, he made a statement of fact. He said persons who had criticized the Prime Minister were arrested. That is a statement of fact. That is not in any dispute. That is not misleading anything.
Mr. President,
he never said everyone who criticized the Prime Minister was arrested. He never said everyone. He said persons who had criticized the Prime Minister were arrested. That is a matter of public record.
Senator, no matter how you spin it, Senator Bunting, it was said within a context.
And it is misleading.
And I'm asking the Speaker to withdraw the statement and move on.
Can I say something, Mr. President? Mr. President, I have written text and also the answered can speak. I said that the people are afraid of government badness. Government badness has been a feature of the JLP government. Anyone who offers critique or dissent, the citizens of the country are afraid. It was then suggested, well, I said that persons who have criticized has been arrested publicly and placed on the internet. So when you check it, so what is there to withdraw? What is there to withdraw?
What?
Persons who have offered criticism has been arrested. Me not say that is the reason.
Mr. President, Mr. President.
All right,
To do that is to juxtapose the two things together. And then you now are going to ask for persons to interpret that to be. That is wrong. And you are misleading. And Mr. President, I am asking you to make your ruling, and if the senator proceeds, then you ask him to discontinue his presentation.
President, before you make your ruling, President, Mr. President, on a point of order.
Senator Brown, what point of order?
Yeah, you've been asked to rule on a comment by Senator Crawford.
No, I've not been asked to rule. I rule already.
You have been asked
the ruling is that you have imputed motive to the Prime Minister, who is a member of the other House, and I'm asking you to withdraw it.
Mr. President.
I'm asking you to withdraw it.
Mr. President. Maybe you need to consult answered, because that's not what I heard said. But it can't be denied, Mr. President, that some people who have criticized the Prime Minister have been arrested, coincidence or otherwise. That is the reality. Some people have been arrested, and we must avoid this dictatorial, we must avoid this road to dictatorship.
Mr. President,
Senator,
you need to calm down, Lambert. You're going on that line from morning.
It was my intention to make it clear that as a nation, many are concerned of the resistance to critique that the government... No, give me a chance. Whether the government side agrees or not. I had no intention, as is being fabricated, sir, to have impugned any motive upon an individual.
So if that be the case, withdraw the statement and let us move on.
But we never say it, sir. All right. Withdrawn, move on. Good. All right. I continue, sir, to say that many individuals are afraid to offer critique to the government. That is true. Not impugning nothing. I'm just saying they are afraid. Fine. Mr. President, All
right, thank you. Senator Crawford, continue,
Yes.
please.
Mr. President, one's political philosophy will definitely shade the lens through which one perceives government policy. Dr. Nigel Clark being the chief architect of the budget before us can be reasonably described as a political conservative. These individuals, Mr. President, can be described as individuals who advocate low taxes, reduce government spending, minimal government debt, and they often champion deregulation, free trade, privatization, and tax cuts. This mindset would definitely impact the budget in particular and the minister's perception of good policy in general. Mr. President, I have never had a conversation with Dr. Nigel Clark re his philosophy, but my conclusions have been based on his utterances and his proposals. Mr. President, can fiscal conservatism work in the era of COVID? And does a fiscal conservative budget do justice to the citizens of the country at this time? One academic writer argues, and I quote, "The COVID-19 pandemic has necessitated a rethinking of the contours of state intervention." The author goes on to posit that the argument for rolling back the state has become questionable, and that at this time fiscal conservatism should be quote-unquote discarded. Other authors, however, suggest that fiscal discipline will accrue to the benefit of nations in the medium to long term, despite the harsh realities being faced. Where there is almost 100% agreement, however, Mr. President, is that all agree that policymakers should have more open and transparent debates about these difficult choices. Mr. President, it is my opinion that the current approach to half-truths does not facilitate this debate. There exists within the design of our very democracy room for policy disagreement and expression of concerns about policy direction. The misdirection and gimmickry should be left, therefore, to the political platform and leave from the House for serious business. Mr. President, there is not sufficient difference between this budget and the ones before to be confident that this budget will cause for us to recover, worse yet, recover stronger. As the budget tabled before is not very different from the budgets tabled today, is not very different from the budgets tabled before. And as Mr. Julian Robinson suggested, the country suffered 3 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth between July 19th and March 2020, when the first case of COVID-19 was reported. During this period, the decline quarter after quarter worsened. As a country, we were only a quarter away from being seen to be in recession. So what we're saying, Mr. President, is when we look at this budget, I see very little changes to suggest that it would lead to a different outcome. Mr. President, one area of policy I personally am concerned about was the GCT reduction as a COVID response. And the good senator spoke to it earlier about the $25 billion. Now, Mr. President, before those in the business of influencing lead stories and media headlines scurry off to fabricate a narrative that Crawford is against tax cuts, let me repeat to be clear, I am concerned about the use of GCT reduction as a COVID-19 response. Yes, to be very clear. Even though I'm sure that the headline narrative will now be Crawford asked to withdraw. But that is fine.